So these are going to be our notes for 4.5. So please make sure that you have a new note opened up in Notability and you have it titled 4.5. We are going to be discussing the different types of roles and responsibilities and relationships between living things in this next section of notes. So here we go. So, the first thing that I wanted you to realize is that when we look at how things interact within an ecosystem, we're talking about the living things kind of more specifically in this example. So, a habitat is an area where an organism lives. So, the habitat could be a single tree, it could be a river, it could be the ocean, so on. So, a habitat is where an organism lives compared to an organism's niche. And a niche is the role or job that a specific species has in its environment. So it may be the role of controlling the insect population in its environment. It may be the role of decomposing dead matter in the area. So that would be the niche. However, all of these organisms are going to live potentially in the same habitat. So the habitat's the place. The niche is like the job, if you think about it like that. Now, there's a variety of ways that things interact within an ecosystem. There are three different types. There's competition, predation, and symbiotic relationships. So the first thing is competition, and this occurs when one or more organism uses a resource at the same time. So think back to our frogs in a pond example. When you had showed the symbol for water, you turned around and you were trying to compete with the other frogs, metaphorically, in the classroom to find somebody else who matched your resource identified as water. So you were competing, and the same thing happens in nature. The next type of relationship is predation, and this is where there's one organism pursuing and consuming another organism for food. So we call this like that predator-prey relationship you probably have referred to. And the last type of interaction that we're going to discuss are symbiotic relationships or symbiosis. And some species survive because of the relationships they develop with other species. There are actually three types of symbiosis, and the next slide is going to delve into each of these types in a more deep manner. So there's mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. So those are the three types of symbiosis or symbiotic relationships. And so I realized actually that my next slide will not come in bit by bit like piece of information. So please make sure that you write down the one type of symbiosis and write down the examples. And then you can like play the video to make sure you're listening to me to explain the different types of relationships. I really don't want you just like writing down the information while I'm talking through all three of them, because then you might miss out on some key important explanations. So, the first type of symbiotic relationship is going to be mutualism. Now, within this word, once again, you know how I like to break words down. You probably see the word you're familiar with is mutual. So, if I have a mutual friendship with someone, that means that we both like each other, we both get along well, we benefit from our relationship. So, take this moment to pause the video right now, write down the information for mutualism, and then resume the video so you can listen to me explain what mutualism is. So mutualism is where you have two or more organisms that live closely together and benefit from each other. So they both get, if we like to think about it, kind of if I were going to describe this, it would be a plus plus relationship. So both organisms are benefiting from this mutual relationship. So some examples might be the oxpecker and the rhinoceros and the zebra, and I will have several of supplemental videos to show you that I would really suggest that you watch when you're done taking the instructional video. Is that the oxpecker actually lives on the back of the rhinoceros or the zebra, and they actually will eat the insects and things like that from the rhinoceros or the zebra. So the rhinoceros is benefiting because they don't have these bugs and ticks feeding off of them. And then the oxpecker is benefiting from this relationship because they're getting their meal on a daily basis. The other example of a mutualistic relationship would be humans and the bacteria that naturally live inside of our gut. The bacteria helps us digest things and make us not have upset stomachs, where conversely, then the bacteria is getting food and benefiting from living inside of our intestines. And the last example that I have to share with you are the acacia tree and the ants. So this is a really cool video that I want you to watch. So the acacia tree is a tree that survives in very harsh environments, kind of like the savanna, where there are very dry seasons and very wet seasons. But the animals that live in that area then need to feed off of the vegetation to get water. So, what the relationship between the acacia tree and the ants is that when animals go to eat the foliage off of the acacia tree, the ants attack the animal by biting it and hurting it and things like that, so that the animal doesn't want to eat the foliage off the acacia tree. And how the ants benefit from this is they get a nice shelter to live in. So these are examples of mutualism. The next type of symbiosis we're going to talk about is called commensalism. And this is actually where you have one organism benefits and the other organism is neither helped nor harmed. So it's kind of like neutral. So when you look at this, some examples would be like the clownfish and the sea anemone. Now this one sometimes ecologists argue that this could go dipping into mutualism. I think of this as more of a commensalistic relationship because the clownfish greatly benefits from living inside of this cnidarian because it gets protection, right? And other organisms, if they try to attack the clownfish, the cnidocyte cells inside of the sea anemone will release and sting any type of predator that tries to go after the clownfish. But however, the sea anemone really isn't harmed or helped. It's just there, if you think about it. Another example would be a remora fish and the shark. So a shark will swim through the ocean, and remora fish are actually the fish that are attached to the underbelly of a shark. And the remora fish don't harm or help the shark. But how the remora fish benefit is when a shark is attacking its prey, there'll be obviously little bits and pieces that float into the ocean that the shark does not ingest, and the remora fish will benefit from these scraps being left behind. The other example of commensalism also is an egret, which is a kind of heron, and a livestock herd. So once again, the egret will benefit from living amongst the livestock herd, but the livestock isn't benefited or harmed from that relationship. And the last type of symbiosis we're going to discuss is parasitism. And I'm hoping that you see the word parasite in there. And we talked about this when we discussed the phylum Nematoda in terms of parasitic relationships and how some platyhelminths are also parasites. So what happens here is one organism benefits greatly at the expense of another. So you have a plus minus relationship. So if you think about it, the parasite is the thing that's going to be benefiting, and the thing that the parasite is living in the host is going to be negatively affected. So things like ticks, headlights, fleas, any of these organisms are parasites. They greatly benefit from attaching themselves to their host and sucking their blood and getting the nutrients that they are getting from their host, whereas humans and pets are greatly adversely affected by these organisms. Same thing go with tapeworms and roundworms and heartworms and dogs. All of these things, you probably give your pet a heartworm pill, hopefully if you have a dog, on a monthly basis so that the heartworms don't infect your dog. Once again, the heartworm would greatly benefit from living inside of your dog's heart, but it could potentially kill your pet. So that is parasitism. And I have an amazing video. You know how much I love to be grossed out. I love this video that I have to share. So please do make sure that you watch it after you finish these instructional videos, and add any information too that you hear from the instructional videos, especially the habitat and niche one, maybe how they're similar and how they're different, as well as looking at the different relationships of the organisms that I've outlined and the types of their symbiosis, and maybe some more that you can learn from the videos. So this concludes our notes for this section, and enjoy the supplemental videos.